Hello YouTube. Today I want to cover some of the common causes of poor air conditioning performance in these vintage Toyota trucks. This will primarily cover the 1984 to 1988 model year Toyota pickups and the 1984 to 1989 model year 4runners, aka the first generation ones. So many people, and I've seen this loads of times in all the forums and stuff and Facebook groups about, hey, well, either it usually starts off as I want to get my AC to work because it's been out of service for probably 20 years, or why doesn't it cool well? And there are a bunch of misconceptions about it and many things that will cause poor performance. Usually it's a mixture of like 3 or 4 different things. So before we even get to anything in the air conditioning system, I want to start with the heater control valve. So the heater control valve is located here on the firewall and is actuated by this cable. Oftentimes this cable, well, either the cable or the valve will seize and the cable will break and they'll get stuck open because people would like to have heat in the winter so they can, see. So make sure the heater valve is working and closing, because if that's stuck open, that right there is going to impact your air conditioning performance. So mine is functional. They're like $100 for a OE metal style one. You can get a later one that is a plastic valve, and those are less prone to failure. And I think they still make the cable that goes to the valve new still, if I remember correctly. I think it's like $20 to the dealer. Number 2. Well, actually, here's another thing too that I recommend as service. This will also impact performance, mainly so airflow instead of temperature. This is an evaporator box. This is an aftermarket style one. These love to fill up with leaves and garbage. This is the side from the blower fan, so pull these out. There are the 2 lines here, various electrical connectors, and then a drain tube on the bottom, and there's a bunch of bolts that come out. All you need to do to actually get those out is to pull the glove box, and there's a metal bar that runs across the front. You do not need to pull the dash. It takes about 30 minutes at most to pull it if you haven't done it before. It comes right out. You can clean all the crap out of here. There's 2 ways to do it. Either you can replace the whole ass evaporator core, which means you just literally whip the old one in the trash and put a new one in. While you're in there, I highly recommend replacing the TXV, aka thermal expansion valve. It is located on the other side of the evaporator box. It is this guy right here. Also, I lied. This is the side that fills up with garbage. You can see there's dirt on this side, and the other side's clean. That's the thermal expansion valve. So that right there, I highly recommend replacing those. Denso's OEM, and never a bad idea to go with the OE choice. So replace that. It usually costs like 10 to 20 bucks. So that right there, they fill up with crap. They don't cool as well. And you also want to, when you're in there too, you can watch the blend door and make sure that moves right. Because if it's not closing all the way, then you'll still have some trace coolant heat, tracing through the heater core backwards. Because although there's not flow through it, it will still be somewhat warm. So, make sure the blend door is moving correctly and all that. Because oftentimes, these trucks are old with a lot of miles on it, and they'll stop working. Or they won't. Things break, and the trucks will still drive, but the HVAC system will be fucked up. On to the next thing, and thankfully in the aftermarket community here, it just came out with these about a year or so ago, and it is one of the biggest performance upgrades you can do to the air conditioning. The condenser. So this is a aftermarket replacement one. This one is referred to as a parallel flow style condenser. If you look, you have these nice round tanks that go all the way to the bottom on both sides. Now your original one will look like this. Now this condenser is bad and needs to be replaced because this tube is delaminated from these fins and it's covered in corrosion. So it will, well, first off, this won't remove heat because there aren't fins touching it anymore, and these are nowhere near as efficient as these parallel flow ones. These have smaller passages, and if you convert to R134A, you will want one of these. This will actually get you decent performance out of your air conditioning. One of the other absolute biggest mistakes too that I see that happens with these that people don't even realize is airflow over these. So an electric booster fan is a quick way to make these work better. That's not the only way to make them cool right. Part of what happens is from the factory they have pieces of foam that go in here to seal it to force air through the condenser. So you can see I tucked this piece of foam in here across the top, and I'm going to shove more in all around the sides to seal all the gaps around it, so when it's running, the fan pulls air, it's forced to pull it through the condenser instead of around the edges. You also want to make sure you have a fan shroud on. This one's missing the bottom piece, but it is on there. And you also want to make sure your thermal fan clutch is in good shape. This one, I might actually replace it. Because, the more airflow over the condenser, the better. Also, one thing that helps too, This is a 22RE, so it is the fuel-injected version. Turn your idle screw up like as high as you can get it. That'll spin the compressor quicker and pull more airflow over the condenser for improved performance. Another thing too is these compressors are oftentimes worn out. This is a new replacement one. It's a 4 Seasons unit. It came from AutoZone for like, I think it was like $300. It kind of hurts to buy a new one, but oftentimes the old ones wear out and don't build up pressure as well, and you'll oftentimes revitalize an old system and promptly have it fail because usually the shaft seal will start leaking. I've also had these O-rings in between the cases start leaking. So that's kind of the common things that happen. Obviously things leak too. The service ports will oftentimes leak. This one I had thoroughly vacuum tested. Everything is sealed and good. That's mainly the things that'll make these things not work well. Upgrading the condenser, making sure the evaporator's clean and all this stuff's closed off will get you good performance. I highly recommend replacing all the hoses too, because these will, over time develop leaks, especially the discharge line, because it's almost under high pressure. So, that's kind of the common things that will happen to these cause them to leak. Also, if you open it up, replace the dryer. I recommend the Denso one. The other aftermarket ones don't fit in these brackets right. The Denso one costs about the same. You have to order them online because no store stocks them, or even, usually they don't even sell them. So, these will actually fit in the mount for the dryer. Otherwise, you have to, sketchily, shim it in there so it's not loose, because you don't want these lines to be loose. You need to make brackets for this, because these will fatigue and crack and cause them to fail. So you don't want that. This one I haven't converted yet, but another question I get all the time too is, which one's what? So the low pressure line is the big line. It comes from the firewall there, runs into here. That is the low side service port. Kind of hard to see, but it's this one, the big line. This is the high side service port. In this case, it's the discharge side of the compressor. So that's the high side. It goes to this small line here. And that's, common on everything. The low side will always be the bigger line. Well, I tried to make a video about this a while ago, and apparently the audio got fucked up. So hopefully this one turns out better. I'll post it and share it around a couple of different Facebook groups to help people out, since right now it's July and it's like 98 degrees with high humidity out.